Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, are you ready for roll call?
Please, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Kinner.
Here.
Representative Larson.
Here.
Representative Schwartz.
Here.
Representative Simpson.
Here.
Representative Stiff.
Here.
Representative Walters.
Here.
And Chairman Nicholas.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
All right. Welcome, committees. Good to see you. I hope you had a good weekend. Back for our virtual appropriations meetings. We've got 3 bills in front of us. The last 63 and 64, we were just referred this morning. And so I'll ask the committee, we could do those today. We could do them tonight. We could do them in the morning if we so choose. We just notice them. And I'm really kind of at the will of the committee. If we're ready for them, we can just kick them out. One of them, there were some Senate amendments to it, so we can debate that. And if we decide we don't want to pass it out yet and we have more conversations, we can discuss them and then reconvene after we've had a chance to meet with the body and our fellow legislators to know how we want to proceed. But the first one is Senate File 32. We'll recall that this is water permits notice requirements. It's our bill. So Ron, were there any amendments? I don't think there were any amendments on the Senate side, were there?
Yes, there were 3.
3. Okay, I got to pull them up. Let me pull
Well,
them up.
actually, there was a second. I was just looking at them, Mr. Chairman. There was a committee of a whole amendment that was adopted, number 2, and then there's a second reading amendment. The committee of the whole amendment is that that was adopted is that language that you see on page 5, where it says that they can put the notice on the state engineer's official website, and that they can also allow for contact by registered mail, or by email. That was the committee of the whole amendment that was adopted.
Yeah, the corrected copy.
Yep, the corrected copy. And then the third reading amendment requires them to say if they want to be notified electronically or by mail, and that the state engineer has to keep a record of that on page 1.
And so my question is, if you don't agree to be notified by email, how does that impact page 5, line 12? Is there mandatory, I mean, do they have to agree to it before you can be notified by email?
Well, I think that's in Senator Simpson's. Any feel on that, Evan? Mr. Chairman, sorry.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I wasn't aware that they had amended this, so I'm sorry I'm not prepared to help.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, which version of the bill? Are you looking at enrolled or engrossed from the Senate? Because page 5, line 12 doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I'm looking at the amendment. So I presume the amendment came off of the original bill, not the engrossed.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
2 things. One, it looks like the 3rd amendment that was adopted makes it an opt-in. You can opt in for email service is what it looks like.
Yep.
Just the first rough glance at it. But second observation and just question for how we proceed is that the fiscal impact of this is almost nothing. Do we go ahead and tackle this whole knotty issue of how we feel about email notices, or do we refer it to somebody else who understands water permits?
Well, it's a direct referral to us, so we can, it's not a review of the fiscal impact. It's whether we want to amend the bill and on the knotty issue of emails. And I would welcome Representative Simpson's thought process on this.
Mr. Chairman, I'm studying those amendments, but if we're going to do this timely, it's going to take me a while to sort through each of these 3 amendments. So I'm not prepared to do that right now. So if we want to table this one, I'd be glad to give you feedback tonight or tomorrow.
Okay, any other thoughts on that, committee?
Yes,
Obviously, I haven't come in either, so.
my sense of it, the other difference was it went from registered mail to just mail. And once again, I mean, it's a cost savings, whether or not that creates any, corollary issues with it. I can't speak to that.
Well, and some notices could be by mail, but some of them probably need to be by registered mail if you're terminating or changing someone's rights, or that's what I'm curious about.
Mr. Chairman, is there someone in the waiting room that can coach us through these amendments?
I don't know the answer to that. Someone raised yeah, Keith Kennedy. Keith? Walk us through the amendments if you can.
Mr. Chairman, I just let them in.
All right. Keith, can you help us with this? Where is he? Asked to be unmuted, Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Keith Kennedy on behalf of the Wyoming Association of Conservation Districts. We don't believe that the earlier amendments are substantial and have no problem whatsoever with folks being able to opt in for either mail or email notification, especially with regards to filing their first permit. As Representative Simpson may well know, many of those permits are filed electronically, and so it certainly makes sense for them to request email notification in the first portion of the bill. The portion of the bill that we had worked on, and that goes to your earlier comment, Mr. Chairman, was when a permit would be in default. And that language can be found in the engrossed version from line 16 on page 6 through the end of the bill. And the only suggestion that we would have to the language in the engrossed bill is that on page 7, line 1, following website, we insert that notify the permit holder by certified mail return receipt requested. And that places the financial burden there would be quite small, because that would only be permit holders who have been in default and did not respond to a regular mail or an email notice. And so that would be the change that we would request. But aside from that, we're quite happy, and it does appear that it does cut some money from this budget, albeit relatively little. The initial estimate, I believe, was between $5,000 and $6,000 a year, and most of that was with regards to registered mail. And so we would support the bill with those, with that change there at the top of line 7. It would also appear to me personally that there's also a line on page 6, line 22, following email, that the remainder of that line could be deleted, as well as the language on line 23 where it says the holder is unknown. We don't feel that that's necessary, given all of the other notices that are opportunities for notice that are present there. And with that, I'd welcome any other questions. forgive me for not tracking all of the amendments through because it changed a considerable amount and really ended up more like the original version, other than the publication notice there on page 7, which was restoring original language.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So thank you. Keith, could you go over that first change that you said was on page 7 in the new language? Just your recommendation for an amendment there, please.
Page 7, line 1, following website, comma, notify the permit holder by certified mail, return receipt requested, and then continue with "and" for the 3 weeks in a newspaper of general circulation.
So here's what I'd like to do before we go on. I'm going to appoint a subcommittee of Larson and Simpson to walk through these amendments and come back to us on their recommendations for amendments and an action. And we'll meet on like 5 or 10 minutes after adjournment today, so we can kick the bill out. And Keith, we'll let you know what your thoughts are. And if you have any more thoughts between now and then, let us know, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will email that language to Representative Larson and Representative Simpson.
That'd be great.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
And Keith, if you have any other hot flashes during the course of the afternoon, if you just notify me and Representative Simpson on that, and we can kind of carry that sidebar conversation on, please.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, this is Ryan. There's another individual in the attendee list with their hands raised. Would you like me to let them in now?
Yeah, on this bill?
Correct, Mr.
Yeah, I see Brett. Yeah, Brett's up there. Okay. Yeah, we can bring Brett in. We see you, Brett. We hear you.
I hope you can hear me, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Brett Moline, Farm Bureau Federation, sitting in support of this bill. I have to say it is a pleasure to come to the Appropriations Committee and support a bill. I think this does cut a little bit of funding. One thing I really appreciate is keeping in the paper option. Many of my members do not have reliable internet. And so allowing them to do the paper way instead of forcing them into electronic is a good stroke. I appreciate that, support that. And I also support the amendments suggested by Mr. Kennedy about the return receipt, certified mail with the water rights. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would sit for any questions.
Brett, I have a question because what we did is take away the publication requirement, and so that all they have to do is publish it on their website. And I don't know how many people will go to check the website on a regular basis and be aware of any cancellation. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I understand it, that's right. That's on something that's been going on for 5 years. It's a new water permit, so you've had a long time, but you'll still have the paper trail there to follow up on it, to make sure everything's getting done right. That's the way I understand it. Perhaps, sir, I am not correct.
Okay, any other questions for Brett? All right, appreciate it.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is a pleasure to support a bill in front of this esteemed body.
Okay, anyone else who wants to comment on this before we move on to the next bill? And as I said, we'll be back on this afternoon so we can pencil this in and have Representative Simpson and Larson give us their thoughts and recommendations on the new language. All right, seeing that. Let me pull up the next bill.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
could you remind us what our notice requirements are to notice the public?
So once we come in and have our meeting, we can extend the meeting on from lunch until afternoon without formal notice.
Okay.
because it's a continuation of the meeting essentially. But I'll just remind folks before we adjourn. So I think we're good on that.
Yeah, I understand that. My question, I guess, really relates to Senate File 63 and 64, which we just were sent to us at, I don't know, 10 something this morning, and we really haven't had a chance to take a look at those. But so I'm not sure if folks.
I agree with that. We did notice those two bills on Friday.
Okay, all right, well, good. That I didn't know, so awesome.
So let's go to House Bill 63. Once again, we recognize this. We've worked this bill. No, we haven't. This is a different one. So is this a re-referral?
Mr. Chairman, this is not a re-referral. It's a direct referral to our committee, but it comes from the CAPFIN committee because CAPFIN can sponsor legislation, but it doesn't have a standing committee during session. It's a CAPFIN bill.
This is a true up of the.
I recognize it now.
Of the mineral trust fund reserve account and the general fund. Is the way I read that.
Hold on one second. I'm looking at the wrong one. Oh, okay. Now I remember what it is. Actually, this was just a timing bill, right? On distributions. And it was to facilitate distribution and also earn more money on the interest.
It was to make distributions quarterly, and at the end of the year, I think you have a true up, whether you overpaid the general fund or not. Is that?
So there was a House or Senate amendment, correct?
Okay.
Correct, Mr. Chairman, and you can see that starting on line 1 of page 3 of the engrossed copy. You'll see that amendment.
So what does the amendment do?
It's reconciliation at the end of the year.
Yeah, that's Romanet 2. All right. So the reconciliation, I think, makes sense. Does anyone have any questions what that does and why it's there? Or we could call Senator Perkins and have him come and explain it to us.
Mr. Chairman, the amendment, the bill and the amendment seem to make pretty good sense. I think the timing of when the payments are made and making sure that you paid what you're supposed to and not more, not less. So, I mean, I would move adoption of Senate File 63.
Is there any, there's a motion moved and seconded by Representative Walters. Discussion. Ryan, are there anyone who wants to comment on this, any of the attendees?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If any of the attendees wish to offer public comment, if they could raise their hands, I'll let them in. I don't see any, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any further discussion on the bill?
Question on the bill.
Question being called. Roll call, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, you're voting on Senate File 63 engrossed, Permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund, Reserve Account, Distribution Timing. Representative Kinner.
Aye.
Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Schwartz.
Aye.
Representative Simpson.
Aye.
Representative Stiff.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
And Chairman Nicholas.
Aye.
7
And
ayes.
Mr. Chairman, I will carry that on the floor.
All right, I was going to say, you can carry it on the floor. All right. Next is Senate File 64. So is there anyone here to walk through the Senate's amendments? Any senator? If not, let's go to the amendments.
Mr. Chairman, the amendment takes that reduction to a 10% reduction in year 2 of this biennium, making it a 20% reduction overall. When we had left our JAC hearings in December, we had settled, and I thought agreed with the other body amicably that we would settle on a 5% for this second half of the year, 10% biennialized. Apparently in their committee, they decided they wanted to go for the full whack right now. And so that's what the amendment does, is it just a changing of that, increasing the reduction.
So the question is, I mean, what's the will of the committee? Do we want to go with what we passed as a joint, as the JAC, or do we want to go and support this number in front of the House side?
Mr. Chairman, I'm in favor of just going to our December position that we all agreed on, and it seems that which puts you at the $99 million level, basically.
I concur with that, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Larson.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I expressed a little frustration that we come out of a joint meeting with an agreed upon amount, and it appears to me that then that's changed just to allow for a conference committee to where that can be changed and meet someplace in the middle there. I guess we just need to have that's just a comment. I'm just frustrated that we come out of a joint appropriations committee meeting following their lead at the reduction and then have it changed again. That's frustrating.
So we've got, let's move the bill. Do I have a motion? Moved by Representative
I would
Stiff,
move.
seconded by Representative Walters. Now why don't we just go to public comment? And so, Ryan?
Mr. Chairman, I'm letting Mr. Jeremiah Ryman in right now.
Welcome, Jeremiah.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Jeremiah Riemann here on behalf of Wyoming's County Commissioners. Joining me this afternoon, and I hope he can be let in as well, is Washakie County Commissioner Terry Wolf. I think he can give you an on-the-ground perspective, somebody from in the trenches. Mr. Chairman, I don't want to get away from a good thing. We certainly appreciate your support for lessening the cut. Admittedly, my members are opposed to the bill outright, and I'll just go through a few things and then stand to support you in whatever way we possibly can.
Jeremiah, can you tell us what the testimony on the floor was as committee of the whole amendment?
Mr. Chairman, it was quite lengthy, and it'd be difficult for me to go into every particular aspect, but I'm certainly happy to try and hit some highlights, if you will.
Please.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, the sense I had was that local governments need to share in the pain as it relates to the budget reductions. And Mr. Chairman, we're not opposed to the notion that we need to participate in finding opportunities to reduce budgets. And the testimony that I would provide in opposition to the Senate testimony was is the fact that at the start of this pandemic, every county in this state, and I emphasize every county, made budget reductions from 10 to 20, and in one case, upwards of 40% reductions out of concerns over what the pandemic was doing to budgets. Now, the other part of that is that the impacts that counties have experienced are not done. As you all know, our ad valorem system, our property tax system, is one such that the impacts are going to come roughly 15 months later from those that were experienced today. So there are additional impacts coming to counties, and Commissioner Wolf can certainly talk about his experience at the local level. Mr. Chairman, I also heard some testimony on the floor suggest that the impact of these cuts is minor, that this is something that the local government should bear, and that there are going to be harder decisions in the days to come. What I would suggest to you all, and just provide some data, is this is a rather dramatic cut for counties at the level that is proposed. You know, some of you have suggested that the 10.5 million is a 20% cut when it's in effect for just 1 year of the biennium. In reality, based on my calculations using the LSO numbers that were provided, the impact to every single one of your counties is roughly 24%. I'm just short of that at 23.85%. So roughly a quarter reduction in one fiscal year will be effectuated. There are only 8 counties in the state that have a lower reduction than that. And those, of course, would be the hardship counties, those counties that are unable to generate $300,000 from one single mill. Mr. Chairman, I also heard that direct distribution funds represent excess funds at the local government level. And Commissioner Wolf will testify to you about what the overall impact is for his county in relationship to direct distribution. I won't go into too much detail there, but I did send out an email last night trying to respond to some of your questions. Representative Kinner, I know you had asked about the difference between direct distribution and the overall budget. There is a tab in the spreadsheet that will show you what that amounts to. And you know, it could be as upwards as high as over 16%. Just of direct distribution in relationship to the overall county budget, and Mr. Wolf will have more on that particular topic. Mr. Chairman, we also heard that counties have excess tax capacity, and I did provide some information about this in the information that I shared last night. Right now, as it relates to the various local options that are available, you have 21 of 23 counties that have enacted the general purpose penny. The 2 that have not are Park, which did again reject that just this year, as well as Sublet. And you can imagine why Sublet might not have approached that particular topic. Roughly, I think the data shows that 13 of the 23 have specific purpose taxes. A couple of those have fallen off in the last couple of months as a result of completing the collections as it relates to those. Others have not enacted those at any point in time, and that data is provided there for you. And then there are 2 counties right now with some level of an economic development tax. Mr. Chairman, what I would say about all of those is the fact that you know, those counties that have not approached specific purpose or used additional general purpose, they simply cannot raise the revenue that many other counties can through those sorts of taxes. You'll find this in the data and in the email that I sent you, but right now 56% of all state shared revenue sources are collected or are received by 7 counties in the state. 66% of all sales and use tax are collected by 7 counties. 73% of all property tax receipts are received by 7 counties. So any attempt to try and fix this situation really does require a multifaceted approach. And in some ways, that's why direct distribution has been so helpful. Mr. Chairman, I really do want to allow Mr. Wolf to provide some testimony and not take up too much of your time, but I do stand prepared to provide you any additional information that you need as you work through this decision-making process.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Any questions for Jeremiah? All right. Mr. Wolf, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Nicholas and members of the committee for the opportunity to testify today. I would like to first start a little bit with just giving you some background on Washakie County and our budget. Our budgeted revenues are $6,968,427, of which of that PILT is 17.5% of that. If our full direct distribution is allotted, that is another 15.9% of our total budget. So the two of those combined is 33.4%. So that a significant amount comes for the Washakie County budget. When we look at other revenues that we've been able to generate in Washakie County, we do have a 5th cent in place for a general purpose tax. And for FY19, that generated $1,408,677. And for the first 6 months of FY20, it generated $811,456. So the average looks like it'll be a little less than a 1.5 million a year going forward. And that definitely is a benefit to the county. One thing that the Washakie County didn't do was take part in that 1% percentage of that. We let that go to the city of Worland, the town of Tent Slate, for senior centers, and several other entities to help offset some of the costs that we've helped some of those entities out with. And that has been a help to them, but it hasn't helped as far as the county. We just felt it was better to allow them to take part in that. Just touching a little bit on some issues that we have here in the county when we start going into some of the departments. When you look at one of our biggest costs is personnel, which is a significant portion of our budget. For over the last quite number of years, every time there's been a position or a vacancy that needed filled, we looked really closely at, was there a need to fill that position? And if there wasn't, we could get by. We did not fill that. Currently, right now, what we've done to help offset loss in the clerk of court's office, and then a retirement of a part-time person in the clerk's office, we're cross-training a person to be able to work in the treasurer's office, the clerk's office, and the clerk of court's office. And that has been a big help for us, just to have that background for that person, because each office is at the minimum staffing that they can have. And if there's a need for somebody to help out because of somebody being sick or gone for vacation or some other reason, we look to have that floating position to be a great help for our offices. When we look at the assessor's office, currently they have 2 field appraisers that physically visit all the parcels in the county, and there's over 1,400 of those. And due to safety and security concerns, they won't send anybody alone out there. So if there's a reduction in force, that's going to mean either the office being unmanned during vacation or education, field work, or sick leave. So we can't cut anybody else in there. So that's one thing we're concerned about. One other thing that the assessor passed on to me that had mentioned that right now there have been 6 of 23 counties that had their CAMA servers replaced in 2020 by the state. But with recent cuts, the remaining counties, the cost will be shifted to them. So for Washakie County, that will be an additional $10,872 that we're looking at. When going to the sheriff's department, everybody's aware of everything that they do in rural communities that the sheriff's department does, from dispatch, jail, all the public lands we have, and the tourists that come through. You name it, there's significant issues there, and they're at a bare bones minimum for the staffing that they have. And problems that we've had too in the sheriff's department is there have been opportunities outside the sheriff department in the private sector where we get a deputy trained, and then a better opportunity for pay and benefits happens, and then we lose those, and so we start over. So it's been one thing that we've tried to look at salaries and budgets. With just it's hard to have that extra funds to compete sometimes with the private sector. One thing that the sheriff had brought up too is in regards to WildLink. Initially, the consoles were covered by Homeland Security, so we could upgrade to WildLink. And his concern now is that they want us to pay for WildLink out of our budget, and that will be a big issue down the road whenever it gets resolved on how that's going to work. Another thing that was mentioned that the sheriff had was at the Law Enforcement Academy, they now pay for ammo, food, PT, clothing, IT, and small incidentals, when years ago it was all covered in the basic class. So just a few odds and ends there. Another thing on our road and bridge department, we have over 250 miles of county road to maintain. And we have 5 people in the road and bridge department, and one of those includes the supervisor. And for our county road maintenance fund for FY21 is estimated at $421,226, and we do our best to make do with what we have. However, what we've had to do is just prioritize the best we can. We've got a lot of areas out there that are very expensive. For example, on the lower Norwood going north out of 10 Sleep, we've got a slope stabilization problem on the road that the high bid came in at $984,000 and the low bid was $515,000 and some change. And it just one thing like that just completely wipes out what we have to utilize there, let alone purchase any equipment to replace, which we haven't done for a number of years now. So that's one thing that we've done. Just is just do the best we can with the funds we have. So I guess to sum things up, for us here at Washakie County, future cuts to the revenues that we have coming in, we're down to personnel, road maintenance, and essential services, and it'll be a tough road to deal with. I mean, we'll do the best we can, but one concern we have is when there's cuts that happen at the state agencies that turn into unfunded mandates that come down to the county level that we have to deal with, and along with the other cuts that we've seen on our end. And currently, it's our understanding that PILT was renewed to the full amount for this next year, but after that, it's projected to be significant cuts to that. So it's concerning. I don't envy your folks' jobs there, but I would sure hope that there's an ability to maintain the funding that the counties are getting right now. So I would stand for any questions. Thank you.
You bet. Questions for Commissioner Wolf? Okay. Anyone else in the attendees who would like to speak? Can you raise your hand, please? Here's Kelly. Okay. And Mayor Hall. You can bring them both in.
Okay. Well, all right. I think my crew is here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the House Appropriations for letting us talk today. We obviously really appreciate all the hard work that you gentlemen do, and really the tough situation we find ourselves in. I am Matt Hall. I'm the mayor of the city of Cody and currently the president of Wyoming Association of Municipalities. I'm joined by our legislative leadership chairman, Mayor of Albin, Kelly Krakow, and our lobbyist, Bob McLaren from Jackson. Obviously, a lot like the county commissioners, our first blush on this would like to see you guys essentially kill this bill. And I think for a couple of different reasons as far as that goes is that for the most part this year, all the municipalities that I've talked to have cut their general fund budgets between 13 to as high as 45% in anticipation for what they're going to be faced this year. I do know that, as was echoed by Jeremiah, that the other fact that the intent of this being a 10% cut, and then the reality when that comes down to, because of the way the biennium has worked, and we've already received the first part of our direct distribution and reimbursements, is that ends up being about a 20% cut. I don't know if I kept in there, or as Jeremiah did note on his numbers, it was going to be closer to a 24% cut. So we would like to say that, assuming that it's the will of this committee to move this legislation forward, that you do adopt it how you amended it in the joint appropriations, where it just did allow, it only had that 5% cut, so that would line up more to a 10% cut for the second half of this biennium. I have talked to some other oil and gas friends of mine in the area. They seem to think that, well, they know that they're going to go from what was about a 50 to 90% capacity in what they've been doing for their oil and gas operations up to 95. So I guess I would see that kind of positively impact the state and maybe impact the savings in some of these areas, like with the rainy day fund. I guess, we want to definitely be a partners to this, and I think that was kind of the real idea for most of our municipalities, going ahead and taking the lead along with the state when we saw a lot of those cuts being made early on for this fiscal budget. And so that is why we rolled out a conservative cuts that we did for our municipalities. And so we feel like we've come to the table with you guys. And, obviously we want to continue to strive to be good partners with you as we work through some of these tough economic times. I'm going to turn it over to my, mayor from Albin to make a few comments. But as Mr. Chairman, I will stand for questions, but turn it over to Mayor Krakow if he's on.
Go ahead, Mayor.
I'm here, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
We can, Kelly.
All right, Mr. Chairman, committee members, first off, thanks for having us on here today to testify. Kelly Krakow with the Mayor of Albin and on the Wyoming Association of Municipalities. Just to echo on what else was said on here, I know, you guys got a hard job with all the revenue situations the state of Wyoming is in. And, we got to make our share of the cuts too as well. But just to add on a few things, we've been cut, for example, the food tax that was supposed to be backfilled that really hasn't been in, money hasn't come back to us like it should. And then a couple things I'll add on from the comments that was made in the Senate side. I've been hearing this for 20 years. When times are good, you're in there, and when times are bad, we need to make cuts as well. But over my last 12 years ago, roughly, the cities and towns were cut 20% the first part of the biennium, another 20 the second. And since we've taken roughly a 40% cut, we really haven't got that money back. And I also heard testimony on the direct distribution. It's been the same, but the consensus money wasn't considered in that. We haven't had consensus money for 4 years, and what it done for cities and towns was huge. And then also in the testimony, one last thing I'll throw out there, because they were talking about whether cities and towns are doing their cap on meals, and the state cap is 8 meals, which one of the representatives testified that only 19 of the 99 were at that, but that's not accurately true, because like the town of Albin and Cody, we're actually capped at 5 meals, because if you don't have your own fire service, they cap the cities and towns at 5, and 3 of that goes to the fire districts, which in the point, it kind of limits us and the amount of money that we can get even from mill levies because of that. Not saying fire departments don't need it, but I guess to echo the points is I think we've taken a lot more cuts than a lot of people have over the years, and we'd just like to have you consider that and possibly getting this back to the joint committee's thing of the 5% instead of 10% cut. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Any questions? All right. Seeing none. Next, is that you, Bob?
Mr. Chairman, I'm just happy to answer any questions. I don't have anything to add. I think they pretty much, between the mayors and Jeremiah, they've pretty much covered it. I guess the one thing I would add is based on the Madden formula, you know, it's not just a 5 or 10% cut across the board. If you're a hardship community, for example, with the Senate testimony on Friday, Laramie's taking a 25% cut just by virtue of how the Madden formula works out. But we appreciate the support you've provided in the past and look forward to working with you in the future. But we really appreciate the opportunity to take this back to the JAC recommendation, or actually kill the bill. But our next desire would be just to get it back to the JAC original motion.
Well, it's interesting. Our budget has gone down over 500 million. So that's roughly a 16 or 17% cut to state government. And so we're all feeling the pain. Okay, any questions for Mr. McLaren? Thanks for the ride whenever you're around.
Time.
Okay.
Mr.
Any other
Chairman,
public comment?
Mr.
Paul,
Chairman,
looks like
I
Paul
have
Weaver wants in.
That's correct. I'll let him in now.
Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll try to, just add my voice to what Mayor Hall and Mayor Krakow supplied you with, but I'll try to provide you with another little bit of a take on that and hear you loud and clear on what these percentages mean for our state and our local governments. I think, as you've heard all around, we all acknowledge this is a pretty difficult time. From my perspective, local government, the city and town budgets, we have our own portion of the responsibility to try to, be team players and do what we can to absorb these things and still keep services and the garbage trucks and everything running on time as best as we can. And I would just add to those folks that have asked the committee to consider holding the original position. And I'd ask you to do that as a means of allowing your local governments to phase in some of these budget reductions, not to delay the inevitable. That's not what this request is about, but to allow some more gradual adjustments of our own. Now, they can't be that gradual, but they could be if we stick to something closer to the committee's original position. I'd like to be specific about some of that. In the previous regular session, the legislature, after working through the process, created some new revenue opportunities that local governments could try to utilize additional penny revenues. It could be approved by voters and some utility fee measures. And those are going to be valuable tools, I think. But of course, what followed right after that was an unexpected and very serious public health crisis. So any plans to go to our constituents to try to pursue any of those additional revenues or implement any new fees that we might be allowed to, that needs to be put on pause to allow for some recovery time. I think after that, your local governments will take a serious look at those, but now would be a very difficult time for our communities and our shared constituents to be asked to do that. So I think a more phased approach to these reductions should take place and would put us all on a better footing to deal with these reductions and also to maybe explore some of those local resources so we're not back here talking to you about how we can't absorb them. So Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, as you've heard from others, I'm not jealous of what you all need to do, but I acknowledge that it's reality, and I appreciate that you're doing the work. And I'd ask that you give these comments that you've heard some consideration and stick to the joint committee position, original position on the allocations that you set out. And I appreciate the time to just share that little bit with you. No lamenting about water under the bridge for hardship committees or the city of Laramie. Like I said, we know that we have our part to do as well. So if there's any questions or anything, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'll sure stick around, and I appreciate the opportunity to share that with you.
Representative Kinner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Weaver, and I don't believe I heard who he represents, county or city. I'd like to know that. That'd be helpful. Thank you.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Paul Weaver. I'm a member of the city council and the current mayor of the city of Laramie. I apologize that I did not give you that more formal introduction. Somebody said Paul Weaver, and I said, okay, I better ready to give my little 2 bits here.
Representative Stiff.
Mr. Chairman, for Mayor Weaver, how much money does the city of Laramie get annually from the local counties, this local tax distribution?
Well, that's an interesting question, and it's been in flux and changing over the last couple of years. So to give you last year's number wouldn't be representative of the previous number or the number before that, because of the challenges that we've been dealing with. I know that we're worried about taking with the current amendment in place that you all are considering right now. We're looking at taking somewhere in the realm of, I think, an additional 2 million. And I know that under the formula prior, that took us somewhere in the neighborhood of 20% from what we had the year prior. And so this would be an additional on top of that would have to be absorbed in the single year because of the way that it works. And Mr. Chairman, through you, Representative, I'm not sure if that helps you at all. I can provide you with some more solid numbers if you'll give me time. I'm hesitant to quote you anything without having it exactly right, but I could certainly get that and get it to you or any other interested members of the committee today, if it would be helpful.
Any other questions? Seeing none, well, Paul, thanks for your comments. We appreciate it. We understand the pain. So
we're all in it together, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much for the time.
You bet. All right. Is there any other public comment?
I don't believe so, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Well, we'll close public comment. The bill's been moved and seconded. Any motions on the bill? Representative Stiff.
Mr. Chairman, I move to amend the bill in the appropriate spaces to make the amount $99,700,000 or whatever the amount was that we agreed to in December. Sorry for the inarticulate nature of that motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Seconded by Representative Walters.
You got it.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
any discussion on the motion? Go ahead, Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Stitz, you're just taking it back to the original JHC position as your motion.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Representative Simpson.
Mr. Chairman, it doesn't make sense to double whammy these counties and cities in 1 year and then drop them back. It just forces them into a situation where they're laying people off that they would normally have a budget for the following year. I support this amendment. Let's make it a straight 10% so it's fair and even across the boards.
Well, and I'm curious if we look at what the other impacts are, the budget cuts that we made that to the general fund, there are other ways that cities and towns are impacted. And so if you combine those, I think that they're getting hit pretty hard, so. Further discussion. Representative Schwartz.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you all have watched me over the years. I'm a softie when it comes to local governments. My inclination at this point is almost just to kill the bill and get it back to the 105. But I can look, even in Zoom, I can look at your faces and see that that would be a fruitless effort. So I will support the bill as amended.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. That passes unanimously. Any other discussion on the bill?
Move the bill. Question.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, you're voting on Senate File 64 engrossed, local government distribution revisions 2 as amended. Representative Kinner.
Aye.
Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Schwartz.
Yes, aye.
Representative Simpson.
Aye.
Representative Stiff.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
Aye. And Representative Schwartz, your enthusiasm is electrifying.
Thank
So
you.
Representative Simpson, I think I'll have you carry this on the floor and present it. Does that work for you?
Mr. Chairman, I was hoping you'd pick me.
Yeah, I think that Representative Simpson might be able to carry a vote or two for us, more than you could. We already got your vote.
I would be glad to, Mr. Chairman. I'm probably going to volunteer to carry the other bill, the one about the water rights. But I'd be glad to carry both or whatever you prefer.
It's your preference. If you would rather, it's up to you. You let me know.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So with that, I think that's all the business we have. But we'll reconvene this committee about 5 minutes after adjournment, and we hear back from Lloyd and Evan. Okay. Representative Kinner, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a logistical question for Ryan. Will we be able to use the same Zoom meeting when we reconvene, or will he have to send out something new?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Kinner, I believe we'll be able to use the same link, but I will send, either way, I will send a new calendar invite, and it'll have whatever the correct link is.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, you got 10 minutes before we gear up. So we'll see you all then.